Even as 25 odd far right-wing and military officers were arrested in Germany who had aimed to storm Berlin's parliament building and grab power, in India it was the visit of Germany's foreign minister Annalena Baerbock that coincided with the launch of $60 oil price cap plan on Russian oil and gas supplies by the G7 and EU countries. But even as New Delhi has made it clear that it would do what's best for the Indian consumers, the two sides held talks on bilateral issues, including Germany's assistance to India on renewable energy and energy transitions, as well as international issues such as their Indo-Pacific strategy, and spoke about China, Afghanistan and Pakistan. More importantly, the German foreign minister declared that Germany does not see India as a substitute partner for China. She pushed for deeper ties with India and seemingly distanced herself from Chancellor Scholz on what is turning out to be the prickly issue of Berlin's relationship with Beijing at a joint press conference with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. She said that Berlin would pursue an Indo-Pacific strategy that focused on deepening cooperation with partners like India and Japan while cutting dependence on China, and said that India will have a decisive influence in shaping the international order in 21st century, especially in the Indo-Pacific. Berlin has also decided to engage in the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative unveiled by Prime Minister Narendra Modi just as India assumed global responsibility with the G20 presidency, and also that of the UN Security Council for the month of December at a difficult moment, according to the German foreign minister. Her Indian counterpart, Dr. Jaishankar, said that topics such as deepening bilateral cooperation, including energy, trade and climate change, were high on the agenda of discussions during the meeting between the two foreign ministers. She said that Germany is our largest partner in the European Union and they are totally supporting India-EU negotiations on trade, investment and geographical indicators. We hope, she said, that they will progress as well. The third round of negotiations on the FDA have just concluded.
In this special episode, we have the privilege of having with us a German parliamentarian and a man who represents the political machinery as far as foreign policy initiatives go in Germany. He has been a foreign policy spokesperson. He is still very engaged with the German parliament on a number of strategic issues worldwide. And Mr. Jürgen Hart, welcome on the show, sir. We are delighted to have you with us, and I would like you to enlighten us about various things in terms of foreign policy and strategic issues, the way Germany looks at it. Because in India, people look at Germany with a lot of respect. Its industrial power, its financial clout, and its neutrality on a number of important issues. How is Germany looking at the emerging world scenario in, firstly, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has put a lot of European countries in a bind because of their dependence on Russia for oil and gas, but also because many of them preferred to leave the world and era of conflict behind them. But suddenly, 19th century diplomacy by the use of force seems to be staring at them all over again.
This is also German people feel and see. We all want to have peace in Europe. We have peace in Europe since 1945. We are proud of that. I think Germany and NATO have their part, their share on that, what we have reached. Unfortunately, we are now in a totally different situation. One of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council harmed international law by attacking a sovereign member of the United Nations, Russia against Ukraine, and this have huge impacts. And the German people, they dream of having peace and not be necessary to be involved in any conflict, but unfortunately, when I go to the Berlin railway station after Friday, when the session of the Bundestag is over, I sometimes see crowds of people fleeing from Ukraine, coming via Warsaw or Krakow to Germany. We have about hundreds of thousands of refugees from Ukraine, and people are not worried about the refugees, but they are worried about the situation in which we are now.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned refugee immigrants, particularly when we used to read reports about the fallout of the conflict in Syria, in the Balkans. Germany was always very patient, kind of had a sensible open door policy to people who had nowhere else to go. Do you see the immigration issue now being a very big challenge for Germany for a long time to come? Because even if they are to go back to Ukraine, from where they've come, what do they have to go back to? They have nothing.
The challenge is that we have to face that most of the refugees might stay in Germany. German labor market is wide open for them, because we have a lack of qualified employees in Germany, and I think all those who are able to work and to find their job in Germany, they will remain in Germany. And others maybe will plan to have education or training or learning how to work in other employment. This is in principle the same with the refugees from Syria and from the Balkans, but our experience as Germans is, if people can live in peace and freedom and prosperity in their own country, they want to live in their own country and their own cultural environment. Nobody is going away from home without a necessity to do that. And Germany, when this huge refugee group of mass immigration into Europe started, for everyone it was clear they want to mainly go to Germany, because the situation in Germany is economic-wise the best, and also our legal situation for refugees is significantly better than in some other European Union member states. And the Chancellor at that time, Angela Merkel, my Chancellor from my party, she decided not to close the doors.
Right.
She did not open gates, but she decided not to close, because she said.
In fact, I was referring to that when I said that in the last decade or so, Germany has shown an exemplary approach and patience to the immigration question.
And this was due to our history, because we know about the pain people have that have to flee from their home due to civil war. Or maybe also a climate disaster, maybe in the future. But this will be one of the reasons for people to flee from home, and we have to be friendly to them, because otherwise we might blame our own history.
Yeah, no, it's an exemplary approach. I wish more countries in Europe adopted a similar approach, which are not under the kind of pressures that Germany is right now on its borders. There is a linked question which I want to ask you, and because you talked about immigration. I mean, can I hypothetically put this situation in front of you? India has a lot of talent. A lot of Indian talented people are looking for opportunities and the right environment to grow. They have traditionally become very successful when they've gone on to countries like the United States. There are issues now in the US with regard to visas for professionals. Would Germany be open to encouraging Indians to come there and skilled labor to begin with, to be part of Germany's industrialized story for the next 20, 30 years?
I think there's a bipartisan support for a more open policy on that field, where we attract people to come to Germany, to work in Germany, or to study in Germany, or to learn their job and their business in Germany. It's always a double coin situation for the countries that people come from. From the personal perspective of a young Indian boy or girl going to Germany and having a job there and staying there, founding a family, it's nice for their private life. But looking to the situation in India, maybe Indian government would appreciate if the best talents stay in the country and help to develop India as a whole. But I think we can find a balance. At the end of the day, I think if someone from Indian origin is successful in Germany, he might go back to India and do German-Indian business, as we learned from the Turkish immigrants to Germany. We have close German-Turkish business relations, mainly driven by people that know both cultures and live in both cultures and probably have the double nationality.
In fact, you led me on to my next question, and that is that, yes, the Indian government would like to retain all the talents, but there is a view in India that you need to create greater playing fields for them to succeed here. Let me sort of just bring in an example. Some Indian writers have suggested that Dubai is really an Indian city because it's been made by Indians. And if Indians are given the right opportunities and the right encouragement, environment and funding, they can create Dubais all over the world, including India. So that is a challenge that the Indian government has to address. But as far as Germany and India's relations go, would Germany be looking for greater opportunities for involvement in the Indian market? German cars are very popular in India. German technology always carries a whisper of respect with it whenever the name is mentioned because it's known to be strong and capable. So what are the areas that Germany would be looking to make more investments in India and become part of India's growth story as you were just referring to?
I think I can tell I had a talk to the foreign minister and we talked about that questions. I think first the high quality of German technology, the price is high but also the quality is outstanding normally, is very interesting for India. I think not only cars for private households but also transport infrastructure, trains, railways and such things. And there's a second very important field where I think we can scale up our relations. We have some core technologies of the future, for example, artificial intelligence. Normally, in former times, it was China a partner to develop these new technologies and to bring them to the market. We don't trust in the Chinese political system, and therefore I think we should think about to do more development of core technologies for the future, or maybe critical technologies for the future, with partners we can trust on, and democracy like India and as an existing and state with existing rule of law, it's a much better partner than China, and therefore I think in those fields we have so much space for improvement, and I'm sure that in Germany and in Delhi, on both sides they are working. We should work on that, and we are working on that.
Right. We'll come back after a break to look at the last issue that you brought out, how we can work together, and of course the bigger question of China, how Germany sees that. But that after a break. Back, we are continuing to have our engagement with a distinguished member of the German Parliament, Mr. Jürgen Hart, who has been quite informed about Germany's foreign policy issues, being a spokesman at the parliamentary level and an observer of issues worldwide, not just in Europe. So, sir, I want to understand from you that you mentioned about China and how suddenly everyone seems to have gone off China. But until a few years ago, there was generally the belief led by Americans in the world that if China is allowed to grow and prosper, it will become a prosperous country like the Western countries and therefore adopt Western political systems, or at least some form of democracy. That belief has not really worked out the way the expectations were. There is also the challenge that the world faces with Russia. And one of the fallouts of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been that Russia and China have become closer and closer together. So we are going to look at a Eurasian bloc with Russia at one end threatening Europe, as it were, and China at the other end threatening East Asia. The Taiwan question is a question in mind, as it were. And America, Europe, India and others, even Japan, are on the periphery. How do you see that?
It's a huge challenge for us all, and I think this is also a topic where India and Germany / European Union has to work closer together, because we have to face this challenge from China. I think it was a big mistake of President Xi from China to decide to better join Russia than the free part of the world. Looking to the economic situation of Russia, Russia is a economic country of minor importance, except gas and oil. There are no products world used from Russia. Totally contrary to that, what is in Japan, in European Union and North America, and I think also today and in the future more and more also in India. Therefore, it was, so to say, a bad decision to go that way for the Chinese president. There is a third way to run an effective country in the 21st century, not as a pluralistic democracy like European, North American and India are, and Japan, and not as a socialistic planned economy state, but something in between, and so to say a ruled democracy. But what we saw, especially in the case of Russia in the last years, there's no attractiveness of that Putin system in other states from the former Soviet Union bloc or Warsaw Pact bloc. Every state who was member of Soviet Union or member of Warsaw Pact is going away from the Russian way. Georgia and Moldova, Ukraine naturally, but also Belarus. Even not Kazakhstan wants to copy the Russian model, and this shows to Russia, and sooner or later I think also Xi will make the same experience, that unfree systems are not attractive for people to live in and to make business with them.
I think that we've heard a lot of, and that is the general narrative that prevails in the West. What little I understand, and I'm quoting from pieces that I've read in The Economist and other international journals, what is attractive to China about Russia is Russia's top-end military technology. Of course, when the world stops taking Russia's oil and gas, China can hog up more and more of it without increasing its dependence on the Middle East, because Russia does have a lot of resources and is planning to expand its oil and gas fields even in the Arctic. There is also the Chinese view that we want to keep it a strictly business relationship with Russia. We are not going to let their system influence us. Perhaps we can influence them with our system, because the Chinese seem to be so much in love, at least the Communist Party, with their model of governance that they feel the world cannot provide them solutions. But the problem for the international community, and Germany is very much a very important part of it, is can you twist the economic levers stronger against Russia and China and get them not to interfere in sensitive spots of the world, India included?
Yeah, I think this is a huge task for us in the future. By the way, I totally agree with your assessment that cheap oil and gas is of huge importance for China, and they now have it from Russia. Concerning weapon technology, I think one of the most blaming factors of this illegal attack on Ukraine is that the power of the Russian armed forces are visibly for all people in the world not as strong as we believed. Even our intelligence probably wrote only the Potemkin papers, the battalion commanders write to the Kremlin. The army is much weaker than we expected, and yes, also the weapon equipment is not as good as we expected. But looking to what should we do with China and China and Russia, but China maybe is a more important player in that twin
yeah,
situation.
Yeah.
China's welfare is very much depending in good trade relations to the rest of the world, especially yes, to North America, Europe, but also India, Japan. And if we develop a common strategy on how to handle China's more aggressive approach in business cases, but also in military arming and operations in the area and so on, we have a huge leverage to convince the Chinese government to come to regulations and rules for a more ambitious set of rules for international trade and international behavior. I think we should try that. I'm not 100% convinced that it will work out, but I think we should try that, because if the behavior of the Chinese government weakens the economic welfare of the people in the country, they lose the basis for their power as a dictatorship of the Communist Big Party, and they will not risk that. And therefore, I promote a strategy, transatlantic, Japan and India, which give us a huge leverage to influence China on that field.
Sadly, China's behavior has not given us room for much optimism. And China seems to, I've been studying China deeply over the last several years, and China seems to believe that it can rewrite the rules of global engagement, because influencing global narratives by the sheer use of force. It is a very worrying trend that is coming to play. But let me shift a bit from China and ask you that in one other area that where we can see greater engagement of Germany with our region, and that is Germany as a leading country of Western Europe and NATO, getting more engaged with Quad, of which we are a member, and also the maritime activity and ensuring that free trade and movement is not hampered because of the territorial ambitions of countries like China. So is Germany looking at not just that, but is Germany looking at defense-related technology transfers to India? Because historically in the past, we have bought German submarines. We would like to do more in terms of picking up German military technology. So which are the areas you think we could engage in?
There's a demand in India for German weapon equipment, because the German equipment is of high quality, and soldiers can trust on the functionality of it. Unfortunately, we have a tough debate in the German government now, which is founded by the left, by the Green Party, by the Social Democrats and the Liberal Party. And especially in the Social Democrats, we have a strong pillar of pacifists, I would like to say. They don't want to increase weapon export. The Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and the foreign security politicians of the government coalition, which is not my coalition, but I support this project, is to have a more open politics, especially towards our friends. From my point of view, India should be a state like other non-NATO members, but friendly states. We have a rule of law in India, we have a democracy, we have a legal framework for the armed forces, and for that what India is doing with that weapons. Therefore, from my point of view, we should go a more moderate way on that field, and I would appreciate that Germany, or I appreciate that Germany sent a frigate to India. Unfortunately, it's what was not our newest model. I think it would be better to have the newest model here to show what German ship technology can deliver.
That's a great thought, and we'd like to end there because we're completely short of time. But a new model can be explored. And I've often said that India, being allergic to alliance systems, India could become, at least in Asia, your classic swing state, which is independent but swinging in the right direction. But more of that in our subsequent engagements, God willing, someday. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks to everybody for watching. Until our next episode, goodbye.